It all started like any other quiet Saturday morning in our neighborhood. The sun was out, the birds were chirping, and my wife was sitting in the living room with a cup of coffee, catching up on a stack of reports she had brought home from work. She had a habit of ignoring the constant interruptions from the neighbors, especially since moving into a community where the homeowners association seemed to think they owned every inch of our lives. The queen of that HOA circus was none other than Karen, the self-proclaimed watchdog of the entire block. She had a clipboard, a permanent frown, and binoculars that she didn't even bother to hide. To her, every small thing was a violation: grass too long by half an inch, trash bins left outside for 10 minutes too long, or curtains that didn't look uniform. That morning, Karen stomped up to our front porch like she was on a mission. She rang the bell once, twice, then pounded on the door with the side of her fist like she was trying to summon the police herself. My wife, already annoyed by her constant nagging, chose to ignore it. She knew Karen wouldn't stop, but she also knew that giving her attention only encouraged her behavior. After nearly 5 minutes of waiting and muttering under her breath, Karen pulled out her phone, and with exaggerated gestures, dialed 911 right on our doorstep. Through the curtains, I watched her lips move as she painted a dramatic picture to the operator. "Yes, I'm here at 54 Maplewood Drive. The homeowner is refusing to answer the door. Suspicious behavior. I believe they might be hiding something dangerous." She lowered her voice as if she were in a spy movie, then added, "This is urgent. We need officers here immediately." My wife sighed, rolled her eyes, and whispered, "She really did it this time." I wanted to laugh, but I knew this was about to turn into a spectacle. Karen strutted around our lawn, pretending to check the sidewalk, waiting for flashing lights to validate her importance. She looked proud of herself, convinced that this would prove her authority once and for all. Little did she know that the person she had just reported was not only innocent but happened to be her worst possible target. When the patrol car pulled up, Karen's face lit up like she had just won the neighborhood lottery. She waved them down, pointing at our house as though she had uncovered some grand criminal conspiracy. "Officers, over here!" she yelled dramatically. "That's the house. She's inside and refuses to answer. I've been keeping this community safe for years, and this kind of suspicious activity cannot be ignored." The two officers stepped out calmly, exchanging glances that already suggested they had dealt with her before. Still, they approached our front porch, and Karen followed close behind, arms folded, lips tight with satisfaction. My wife finally opened the door just as the officers were about to knock. She didn't look startled or worried. She looked calm, in control, and slightly amused. The moment the officers saw her, their entire demeanor changed. Both straightened their posture immediately. "Chief," one of them said, almost too quickly. The other gave a respectful nod. "Good morning, ma'am." Karen froze mid-smile. Her jaw slackened, and her eyes darted between them and my wife, trying to process what she just heard. "Chief?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "Chief of what?" My wife crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow. "Chief of police. Newly appointed last month. Didn't the HOA send out the local news clipping? I thought they shared everything." The officers chuckled lightly. "Sorry about the trouble, Chief. We'll file this under a false emergency report. We'll also note that this wasn't the first time we've had to respond to exaggerated concerns in this neighborhood." They glanced at Karen knowingly. Karen's face turned red, her smug expression dissolving into pure embarrassment. Wait, this must be a mistake," she stammered. I didn't know. She wouldn't open the door. I was just protecting the neighborhood." My wife didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Authority carried naturally in her tone. "Karen, calling 911 for personal grudges or petty inconveniences is a misuse of emergency services. Do you realize that while you tied up resources, someone out there might have needed help in a real emergency?" Karen tried to protest, but every word dug her hole deeper. The other neighbors had started peeking out of their windows, some even stepping onto their lawns to witness the scene. A ripple of whispers spread across the block as people realized what was happening. The story of how my wife became chief wasn't something we bragged about. She had served for over 15 years, climbing through the ranks, proving herself time and again in some of the toughest cases the city had seen. She had broken barriers, fought corruption, and earned the respect of every officer who worked under her. But in our neighborhood, she had chosen to keep her professional life quiet, preferring to live like any ordinary resident. That secrecy had just made Karen's humiliation 10 times worse. Karen, desperate to save face, raised her chin. "Well, how was I supposed to know? You never told us. We have rules here. And rules are meant to be followed." My wife gave her a smile so controlled it was almost a warning. "You're right, Karen. Rules are meant to be followed. And that includes laws about wasting police resources. I'll let this one slide as a warning, but if it happens again, we'll be having a very different conversation." The officers nodded in agreement. Karen's power crumbled in front of her. The proud HOA enforcer had just been outranked in every possible way. The aftermath spread through the neighborhood faster than wildfire. By that evening, everyone knew what had happened on our lawn. Karen had been exposed, not as the protector she imagined herself to be, but as the instigator who had tried to bring down the very person sworn to uphold the law. People laughed behind her back, some even openly. A few neighbors knocked on our door later to apologize for not standing up sooner against her bullying. For the first time, Karen kept her distance. No more daily inspections, no more pounding on our door with new violations. Instead, she walked by with her head lowered, pretending to check her phone. The HOA board itself called a special meeting, not to scold us, but to discuss her misuse of her position. Rumors swirled that they were considering removing her from her self-appointed post as enforcer. One afternoon, as my wife and I sat outside sipping coffee, Karen cautiously approached. Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "Look, about the other day," she started, fumbling with her words. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I care about this neighborhood. Maybe I went too far." My wife didn't gloat. She simply nodded. "Karen, caring about the neighborhood doesn't mean policing people's private lives. That's my job, professionally. Not yours. If you really want to help, maybe start by being a neighbor, not a warden." Karen swallowed hard, gave a small nod, and retreated. It wasn't an apology, not a full one anyway, but it was the closest she would ever come. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood shifted. Without Karen constantly breathing down everyone's necks, people began to relax. Kids rode their bikes without fear of a violation notice. Families decorated their porches freely. The atmosphere lightened, and for the first time since moving there, I felt like we were part of a community. As for Karen, well, her legend lived on. People whispered the story at block parties and laughed about how she had accidentally called the cops on her own police chief. It became a cautionary tale of arrogance meeting karma, of power being humbled in the most public way possible. One evening, as we watched the sunset from our porch, I turned to my wife and said, "You know, you didn't just put Karen in her place, you gave the whole neighborhood its freedom back." She smiled, took a sip of her coffee, and said, "Sometimes the best way to fight tyranny is with the truth. And sometimes," she added with a smirk, "you just have to let people find out the hard way who they're really dealing with." We laughed together, the air finally free of Karen's shadow. And from that day on, every time I heard a siren in the distance, I couldn't help but grin, knowing that somewhere out there, Karen was probably thinking twice before ever picking up the phone again.